Rolling here. So I welcome everybody. My name is John Tare. I am President and CEO of the Boulder Chamber, and I welcome you to our one in our many series here, the Lunch and Learn at Home series. And this one is called You Are Not Alone, focused on our gig workers, independent contractors, and solopreneurs. I want to just walk through the program with you a little bit, and then before we get started into the actual program and introducing our guests. So Tyler, if you can just hit that next slide, that'd be great. So the way we want the program to roll today is first, just a little introduction on some of the COVID-19 business resources that we have available through our Boulder Chamber website, but in collaboration with our Boulder Business Response and Recovery Alliance. And then we're going to kick right into the program. You are not alone. And the focus for our work today will be threefold. One, we want to share with you some information that is focused on independent contractors, solopreneurs, that comes out of a very interesting survey that the City of Boulder did on business impacts associated with COVID-19. We will then focus our attention on the resources and support that can come from Colorado, from the state. We have a great guest speaker to talk with us about that. And then we'll come a little bit more local and talk about our Small Business Development Center and the resources that they can help make available to independent contractors through their contacts with the SBA and those funding resources. Now, we are going to ask that keep everybody on mute through this, but we will have a Q&A period. And so there's a question and answer feature in the Zoom function, and we ask you to use that for putting your questions out there, and we will walk through them, as many as that we can get to by the end of the program. And we typically follow up with written responses if we can't get to all of the questions. And then finally, you should know that this is all going to be recorded so that you can watch it, share it with others after the program's over. So just to start then on what resources are available through the Boulder Chamber. We have been very focused on three things. One is from the very start to make sure that information resources are available to all of our businesses, and our workforce, so independent contractors, solopreneurs, but then also to our small businesses and large businesses alike. We make the information available through a collaborative website that is now housed on the Boulder Chamber website, boulderchamber.com/COVID-19. And if you go to that site, very well documented and categorized, you will find really the most current information. And we try to keep it updated on a regular basis, either through our own resources that we've collected or connections to the other resources that we know are the ones that are going to keep you most informed. We also provide, as a resource to you, access to funding. So two things. One, I can't say enough about the work of the Small Business Development Center and the great access that they've provided for our businesses to the federal funding. And we've been voiced with our Boulder, our Alliance of Business Support Organizations, in getting those resources to our community, and then helping and assisting to make sure that all of our businesses can fill out the forms and get to the lending resources that will give them access to that funding. And then finally, the Boulder Chamber, we've been an advocate for business interests during this time. And that's everything from the changes in regulations that will help you to operate your business at this time, to working with our partners at the City of Boulder to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support you now during the response period, and then prepare the framework for a successful recovery. So information, funding resources, and advocacy work. And the final thing I'll mention is that we were able to build up a fund, a small business relief fund that was supportive of many of our small businesses. That's something that you probably read about. And we're hoping to identify more resources that can be specifically supportive of our solopreneurs and independent contractors. So we're working on all those fronts as well. So that's a little bit about what resources currently are available, but want to move right into the programming. So just to introduce our panel, and they are all great friends and folks who I have just wonderful confidence and strong relationships with in our partnership to address your business needs. So the first person that will address us all is Jennifer Pinsino. As it says, she is the business liaison for the City of Boulder, but in her former life, she worked with me at the Boulder Chamber in our Boulder Economic Council, and she is a leader in understanding the temperature and the needs of our business community through great data analysis and survey resources. And that's what she's going to talk with us about, specifically focused on the needs and interests of independent contractors and solopreneurs. We then are honored to have with us the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment, Joe Barella. And I can just say that I've gotten to know Joe in his now 2 years on the job. And I just am so impressed always with his just sensitivity to the needs of our workforce. But it's remarkable what they have achieved in his department during this time. And it's a model for the country, but just the way that they have stood up a program to then support our workforce and independent contractors like yourself. So I'm excited to hear what Joe has to tell us about those resources at the state. And then a great friend, someone who I've had the great fortune to partner with before this incident, but certainly we've had to work much closer together during this crisis period, and she just has demonstrated her great talents, and that's Susie Bonson, who is the Assistant Director at the Small Business Development Center. I will say it because she probably won't. It is recognized nationally as a leading small business development center, and Susie and her executive director, Sharon King, are recognized for their leadership in that field. So a great panel. Enough from me. I'm going to turn it over first to Jennifer and have her walk through that great or very interesting survey information from the Business Impact Survey. Jennifer, take it away.
Okay, thanks, John. We're getting there slowly but surely.
Looks good.
So as John said, we did a survey of businesses earlier this month, and it was to try and get a better understanding of how businesses have been impacted. And the survey really did confirm a lot of what we believed or suspected was happening with Boulder businesses. This was an online survey. We reached out to people who had business licenses with the City of Boulder. We ended up with over 1,200 people responding to the survey. It was a very broad range of businesses and included about 400 self-employed individuals or sole proprietors. What we found is that overall, people said they had been impacted by COVID-19, not surprisingly, but we had almost 80% who said that their impact was significant. That was about 70% of sole proprietors. And the greatest impact, as you would expect, were those businesses or in those industries where they really had more one-on-one interactions and with clients than in things like personal or professional services where people could work remotely. The financial impact, we asked people, we gave them a long list of possible impacts, and the things that had to do with financial came out as being more of an impact. So we had a lot of businesses, sole proprietors, having decreased sales or revenue, a lot of canceled orders from customers, and a lot said that they had difficulty paying their business rent or utilities. And as you would expect, someone who worked from home wasn't as impacted as someone who actually rented commercial space. When we looked at their impact on business operations, a lot of businesses, 60% throughout Boulder, reported that they continued operations despite COVID-19. In some cases, they had to reduce their operations or their production. About half of sole proprietors were able to continue, and many ended up closing, at least temporarily. And again, it really varied by industry, with personal services, healthcare, retail, restaurants being more likely to have to close than others. And again, this was early April. We found, to a lesser extent, they made other changes, like discontinuing on-site sales or service, decreasing promotions, postponing large meetings or events, or canceling their own contracts with vendors or service providers. And then we also had a few that actually ended up starting or increasing online sales if they hadn't before, or starting or increasing delivery and increasing promotions. And again, this was very early in April, and so we expect that this has changed over time and will as businesses adapt to having to do things differently. So through the survey, we really found that this was something that's really felt widely throughout the Boulder business community. Impacts really do vary by business size, the industry, and other factors. And because of that, we feel like it'll take a range of approaches to really address business needs. Impacts on sole proprietors also vary by industry. That many businesses have experienced negative financial impacts due to COVID-19, and that we asked about assistance needed. A lot of businesses mentioned needing financial assistance, of course, and there were other forms of assistance they also thought they would find to be helpful. Some of the good news that came out of this is a lot of businesses who had experienced closures or having to reduce staff or make changes to their operation felt like these changes would be temporary, but that businesses felt that they would be facing more challenges the longer this went on. And that's really the highlights of the survey. We have posted this on the city's website under the City Council information packet for tonight, and we'll be presenting it to City Council tonight. And that's it.
That's a great, sobering information, really. Hard to say great, but it just paints an important picture of the circumstances for our business community, large and small. And yeah, really important that we understand that, Jennifer. So thank you so much. Again, we'll take questions at the end, so we can move through the program, and just make sure just to post your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll respond to those. But I wanted to just turn it over now to Joe and have him talk a little bit about what resources are available through the state of Colorado in your office.
Thank you, John, and appreciate your work in making sure that your membership is informed on how they best can survive this unprecedented health crisis and economic issue that the state of Colorado and globally we're facing. So appreciate the opportunity to be in front of your membership and kind of address what they're thinking about. I always like to start off these presentations that, you know, as little as 2 months ago, Colorado Department of Employment was really focused on the future of work and how we need to prepare our workforce and our employers to deal with artificial intelligence, digitalization, and how work is going to change not only for our W-2 employees, but our 1099 employees, and figure out how we can get in front of that. in less than 6 weeks ago, the future of work automatically turned into something different for us. And how do we continue to help people financially support themselves through independent work or even traditional work while dealing with stay-at-home orders in a health crisis? And so, you know, the Department of Labor, I think many of you have heard, we've been hit very hard with probably now the end of the April, Thursday, we'll have probably more than 400,000 individuals in Colorado apply for unemployment insurance in the last 6 weeks. It's just astronomical on how we have gotten to this place in 6 weeks. And so through the traditional unemployment insurance, yes, many of those are eligible, but with the CARES Act that was introduced by Congress in late March and signed by the president, it made available to us the opportunity for the first time ever to offer financial unemployment insurance to our independent contractors, our gig workers. And so I think we're excited that we, in Colorado, were able to stand up that process in 2 weeks of making sure that assistants could handle that new program, but also the guidelines that come with it. And I want to real quickly mention, I think I went too far on this, that we're trying to answer the individual chat questions that are coming in from your membership in regards to issues or concerns they have with the pandemic unemployment assistance. Specifically, what we're running into is the federal guidelines are very clear that you must exhaust your eligibility for state unemployment insurance prior to being eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. And so we have to make sure if that, you know, in any of the for the past 5 quarters, if you receive wages on a W-2 and paid into that state unemployment system, the federal government is mandating that you take advantage of those benefits prior to being eligible for what's now available under the CARES Act for independent contractors, gig workers. And so what we're running into is that as independent contractors in that 5-quarter period, you may have had an episode where you earned over $2,500 in traditional W-2 income. And so the law is requiring that you exhaust those benefits. And so you have to go through that eligibility process, get those benefits, and then apply for the pandemic unemployment assistance. And so it's an extra step, but we're finding people, you know, you will be eligible. You can backdate those. You will be also eligible for the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which is the $600 additional per week back to March 29th. When you exhaust the state benefits, then you can reapply and use your 1099 income or your attestation of income as an independent contractor to apply for ongoing benefits if you're not able to find work or go back to work as a contractor or a gig worker at that time. So I do have staff that are online trying to answer those specific questions because, as you can imagine, everyone's situation is a little bit unique, and there's not one right answer for the 6,000 gig workers that applied for unemployment, pandemic unemployment assistance this past week. And so we want to make sure that we give you some easy access and we answer those questions. So John, if we can make sure that the chat line questions are saved somewhere so that we can make sure we can answer them, and then you can post them for your membership online so that we give people accurate information.
Yep.
I do want to, at the same time, talk about a little bit, you know, as you know, I just mentioned about 400,000 people have filed claims for unemployment insurance. We receive anywhere from 15,000 to 20,000 calls into our call center. Those are unique callers that are trying to get answers via the telephone. We're trying to encourage people, please use the online coloradoui.gov to go through our frequently asked questions. There's a chatbot feature on there. There's really easy access to forums that you can get your answers to the many questions we're getting that are common, so that you don't have to wait online or even worse yet, get hung up on, because not only are those 15,000 or 20,000 individual callers calling once, they're calling multiple times, so tens and 20 and thousands of times. And so it's bombarding our system. We have about 200 individuals that are trying to answer those calls. We hired a call center to make sure that we have relief on that, but we're still not able to meet the demand in those call centers. So the best way right now I can tell you is coloradoui.gov. Go through that website as a a gig worker, or if you have W-2 income, go through the traditional UI application process. We are trying very desperately to get people processed, and we are doing that. As I mentioned, 400,000 people have been successful in getting their applications through. I want to talk a little bit about returning to work. This applies not only as a independent.
Hey, Joe, real quick, do we want to try to move your slide back to the earlier slides, or are you on the slide you want to be on? Yeah, I just want to make sure you were following with your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And so I just wanted to mention, we did a virtual town hall and trying to get some of the people in a queue where we could give them information. We had one last week where we had over 20,000 participants ask questions, and we answered those. Those are posted online at our website. If you'd like to view those, there's one in English as well as one in Spanish. We will be conducting virtual town halls again next week to make sure that we give people an opportunity to hear what new information is out there, and also answer questions in a mass way rather than individual phone calls coming in. And I mentioned earlier that we talked about the call center that was added specifically for the new populations that are eligible under the CARES Act. Let me go to the next slide. On here, I did talk a little bit briefly about the additional $600 per week. I need to remember people that the key here is that will go retroactive if your circumstances were anytime after March 29th, and that goes through the end of July of this year, that $600 additional payment is available not only for just traditional unemployment insurance, but if you're eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance, that will be added to those weeks that you're eligible for benefits. And so just to make sure you're aware that that benefit, even though maybe your employment situation was impacted early April, you just got into the system and applied today, those will be backdated for that $600 under the FPUC through March 29th. And then with the PUA, if your circumstances changed with a loss in wages or loss in workable hours in a week, that will go back to February 2nd. I think I went through all this already. Want to talk a little bit about the Stay Safer at Home order that was announced over the weekend and yesterday by the governor. Real important information here is as people start having the opportunity to think about returning to work, either as a W-2 employee or as a contractor, there is still stipulations in both forms of unemployment insurance that if you need to be available and ready and able to go to work, and so if you get viable offers to go to work, or if you get called back to an employer, there is a stipulation that if you're able to, you need to return to work. And so employers can report refusals of people refusing to go back to work, just so you know that, if you feel unsafe, if your employer hasn't put in social distancing or best practices for a safe work environment, those are viable reasons that could allow you to remain on unemployment insurance. And so you have some rights there to exercise in refusing to go back to work for valid reasons. Just know that as an employer submits that information, we have to look into that and investigate that claim. So there could be a jeopardy to your ongoing unemployment insurance. So just so you know that there is, as always through the unemployment system, a requirement of recipients to continue to look for work, viable employment as they can do that. Workshare is an opportunity mostly for W-2 employees to look at bringing people back where they can't maybe offer them full-time employment, where they can maybe have them work 30 hours a week, but then continue to collect benefits for 10 hours a week. So we're looking at a lot of small businesses as they don't know what the new normal looks like, as they maybe start getting to 50% of their workforce coming into their offices, maybe into their places of business. Is Workshare an option where they can share some of that financial liability of bringing employees back on when there's so much uncertainty? So that's available on our website, again, at coloradoui.gov. And if you're an employer, you can go to the employer link that will give you more information about that. I think the last thing I want to talk about is as we start thinking about opportunities to go back to work, the governor and the Department of Labor last week stood up Onward Colorado. It's a rapid response resource for impacted workers. that will allow you to look at resources in your community. So in Boulder, you could go into Boulder County and it'll pull up resources not only for COVID health information, but resources such as access to testing, access to food banks, access to resources, rental assistance in your specific community, but also will give you an opportunity to start looking at viable employment opportunities in that community or that radius of the community. And it'll also start linking people who are realizing that because of my work, maybe the economic resiliency recovery of my industry is not going to happen, or my job has disappeared and I don't think it's going to come back. You can start looking at what's next as far as skills transition and training opportunities that can get you back to work. So I would encourage people on the phone to use this resource and share with their friends. Again, it's onwardco.org. Here's a little bit of the statistics on that, so you can look at it. I won't spend too much time on that, but it'll really give you an idea of how we work with a company called Bitwise to really look at not only what systems and structures were in place in Colorado, but to go into the local areas and really try to make it specific to people that live in our communities throughout Colorado. So you can find access to not just statewide resources, but specific to Boulder County, La Plata County, and not just Denver County. Finally, I just want to reiterate that we still have an agenda here at the Department of Labor and Employment to make sure that all workers and all Coloradans have an opportunity to prosper as we go through this pandemic, but as we come out of it. And so how do we as a state really address how work will look in the future, how many workers will have opportunities to return to their former occupations, how many will have to be reskilled and retooled to look at what opportunities lie in front of us, but also at the same time looking at how do we make sure that we appreciate what work looks like tomorrow. So we already know that more people will have the opportunity to work remotely, location neutral employment, that you don't have to come into an office or a place of business. But we also have people who, how do we make sure that we are protecting our gig workers, our independent contractors as we move forward? So modernizing worker protections and looking at how we make sure that everyone who has an opportunity to contribute to the economies, not only for their family members or themselves, but their communities, we make sure that we're looking at that as viable and making sure they have protections as well as wage guarantees moving forward. So again, I know a lot of the questions coming in on the chat, John, are related to unemployment insurance. And so we want to make sure that we get those people answers so that if they're eligible for any of the programs we offer here at the Department of Labor, we make sure that they have access to that. So thank you for your time.
Oh, Joe, thank you for your time. And I first of all, just incredibly impressive, 400,000 applicants that you and your team are processing and supporting during this time. It's remarkable. But then I also appreciate that your organization continues to look toward the future and providing protections and support for this evolving gig economy. It's important that we respond to the current crisis, but put in place the resources that are going to allow for that kind of economy to thrive and to protect that workforce on the future. So Joe, such great work your department's doing. And as Joe mentioned, I mean, a lot of questions are being answered in the chat room. So we will sort through the ones that are remaining that haven't been responded to as we get to the end. So keep putting your questions into that chat room, and either you'll get an email response directly or we'll address them here online. But I wanted to then turn it over to Susie and talk about now what programs and services are available through the SBDC for gig workers, independent contractors, and sole proprietors. So take it away, Susie.
Ciao. Thank you, John. Let me get my screen set up here. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And, I have to say that one of the, there are always silver linings to, different circumstances. So working with you and the chamber has been like one of my favorite things.
Oh,
so thanks for having us. And I do mean that because I think that I haven't seen so much collaboration in really all my days. And so I'm very grateful for working with everybody.
Me too.
So, okay, so let's get started. First of all, the Boulder SBDC is one of 1,000 in the country. We are networked with 15 in the state of Colorado, and the City of Boulder is our host. We also report into the governor's office. So we work very closely to combine our efforts, especially now, just like we do with the economic development teams like the Chamber and downtown Boulder and what have you. Our center focuses on Boulder County, and then we have a statewide program. Our statewide program is focused on technology. So our tech source program is innovation and research. So think clean tech, NASA, things like that. I wanted to curtail this presentation really, particularly to those, to the audience. So you gig workers, independent contractors, sole proprietors. We get a lot of questions from, people that are just like, okay, what options do we have? So I just wanted to kind of cover what we do as an SBDC. So we do consulting at no cost. We have about 40 consultants, maybe more now, that are all experts in their field. They are all, they're commercial real estate, they might be a CPA, a marketing professional, what have you, but we pay them out of our funding, a small portion, certainly not their usual hourly rate, and they all work with us confidentially. They provide you consulting to help your businesses grow, and that's really what we're here for, is to start businesses, help businesses grow, and then help scale. So consulting, we also do a lot of workshops, and we have a couple of accelerator programs. Right now, our workshops are at no cost to you, and we do a webinar series on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. Those are part of a series called Keeping Your Business Together in a Crisis. And so we are trying to find relevant information to share with you as times change, because as you can see at the bottom of this first slide, my slide says April 28th, 2020 at 12:35 p.m. because by the time we get finished this, something might change that I mentioned, because that's just the way that things are going. We also do connections to resources. So, I'm going to use the Chamber again. So John has reached out many times and said, I have somebody, they need help. Can you help them? And we'll connect them quickly to one of our specialists. It's just one of the great things that we can do as a network. We are connected to the state, the Minority Business Office, government contracts. We have a lot of connections to like RTD, so Connect-a-Dot and things like that. So microloan programs that are connected to city funds as well as state. So those are the things that we do, and we're here to support you. So you can come to us whether you're a sole proprietor or a business that's manufacturing and you have 50 employees. It really doesn't matter. Or if you're trying to bake out an idea, especially now I'm seeing a lot of people shift with maybe your business model isn't quite sustainable. So it's like, how do you change what you're doing and do something that that may be better for you in the long run with these changing times? So that's how we can help. And I want to talk I'm going to say in broad strokes about PPP and the EIDL loans and then alternative funding. And I don't want to take up too much time because I know there are a lot of questions. So we're getting a lot of calls. It's great that Joe talked first about the unemployment side of things, because the Paycheck Protection Program and unemployment, there's a lot of questions and confusion, especially for sole proprietors and 1099 and gig workers. So I just wanted to share with you that the initial intention of the PPP program was to cover payroll and to help employees, help keep people employed, basically. And so the difference with the PPP program is the forgiveness side of things. So there's 8 weeks of forgiveness for payroll and up to 75% and then 25% of other funds. So the thing about that is that you have to pay attention. Most people are most interested in the forgiveness part and not the loan part. So we can help you with that, because I don't want to take up too much time today covering it, but I did want to just, breeze through and talk to you a little bit about how you do qualify for those funds. There's an extra $320 billion that has been infused as of Monday, which was yesterday at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. The thing that's different this time around, because we've heard a lot about what's happened with these SBA funds and funds that have been approved by the Treasury. There's $60 billion that is dedicated to community lenders. So you think Colorado Enterprise Fund, Colorado Lending Source, smaller banks. So smaller banks are there to help smaller businesses, and that's good for a lot of the people that are on this call. So there hopefully will be some opportunities to get some of the money that you might not have been able to get before when those funds were gone. And then as far as the economic injury disaster loan, the EIDL loans, the advanced portion did change. So it's based on employees. So it's $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. And we are seeing some of that money start to flow. But the EIDL loan applications aren't open yet. And that's why I didn't want to cover it too much. They are supposed to open again because there's an additional $60 billion more that's been infused for that program. So you can stay tuned for that, because everyone, if you're a business owner, you are able to apply for those funds. And they don't have the same restrictions as far as what you can spend the money on. They're really meant to help you continue on your business as you're, to help you through the pandemic. So just quickly, and I know that this is being recorded and this slide will be shared. So, for people that there are a lot of calls like, how am I supposed to get this money in? I don't collect payroll, I'm a gig worker. I'm not sure how I qualify. You want to use your 2019 IRS form. The Schedule C at the line 31 that says net profit amount is what you're going to use. If you haven't applied or submitted your taxes, you still will need to do this 1040 form in order to show that you qualify to get this money. So you take that form, you reduce, if you make over 100,000, you're going to just use 100,000 as your line item. And then you're going to calculate the monthly net profit, divide it by 12, and then times it by 2.5. And if you need help offline, because again, I don't want to steal the time, we can certainly help you to figure all those things out. The one thing I want to point out from a calculation time period is, since the time I put the slide together and then an hour ago, things changed. So it's a great example. So for example, for you seasonal businesses, it used to be that between February 15th, 2019 to March 1st, 2019, you decided between that what you were going to calculate for your funds. And now it's any 12-week period between from May through September. So it's again changed. And if you need help with keeping on top of all of the different calculations and things, please feel free to contact us and we will help you with that. But you can always reflect on this slide, and this is new information. So finally, from a resource standpoint, you can use these links for PPP and EIDL information, or again, you can contact us. But I wanted to point out that there's an alternative funding sheet that's gone around. And I know that from a city standpoint, again, John had mentioned that we're all a team and we're all talking and trying to find low-hanging fruit money. And, the chamber did a great job with the city to pool funds together for small businesses. But there's a sheet on this link, this choosecolorado.com, that is a spreadsheet that all the SBDCs are pulling together. There's little things. If you're an artist, you could qualify for a grant. If you are a hairdresser, there's $1,000 grants out there for hairdressers. And I know that those doors should open again, but you know, $1,000 is a lot of haircuts for some people. So look at that list and see if you can qualify for some of that money. I know Spanx has a grant that's posted on there. It's the Red Backpack Fund or something like that. And there's some good, I think it's for women business owners as an example. So take a look at that. We're doing webinars every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. Tomorrow, our webinar is going to be about opening again. So Zach Swank and possibly from the county and possibly somebody from the state will be on that call to talk about, you know, I mean, that's our big topic for the week, right, John? You know, how do we get doors open and help people get moving? So each week that's different, and we record them also. And then from a consulting standpoint, you can go to bouldersbdc.com/consulting. And again, we are here to help you, and it doesn't cost you anything. So that I went a little bit over, but my time is up. So thank you so much.
All of it valuable, Susie. Just again, the SBDC, think about them as the conduit to your business resources support, but also just great counseling services and information. So I urge all of you to be in touch. And, you know, if you have those individualized questions, Susie and her team at the SBDC have just been a great resource and just with quick responses. But we only have limited time and a bunch of questions. So I'm going to just go through some questions that have been shared with me from the chat room and just offered up to the panelists and ask them to share with us their responses. So the first question, what if our W-2 income that we are still partially making right now, and they're making it virtually, continues to decline in hours? Can we update our unemployment insurance claim even after we have been approved?
Very good question. And yes, you're required to recertify in Colorado for regular unemployment insurance every 2 weeks. And so if your circumstances changes, if you're seeing a reduction in hours or wages, please put that into that recertification form. If you're back to work and no longer needing unemployment insurance, you just need to stop doing the recertification and that claim will close down. And so at any time, you need to self-monitor your situation. So if your wages continue to go down, if you have a reduction in hours, those are all things that could impact your weekly benefit amount. And so please recertify that information as you go in every 2 weeks with your PIN to update your status.
Really helpful, Joe. Okay, here's another one I imagine also will be for you. Can you clarify what it means to quote unquote exhaust regular UI means? And then what if you have a small amount of freelance income coming in that is voiding your unemployment insurance benefits?
So, you know, this is unique on the form and unemployment insurance. The lowest amount we pay, if you're even eligible for $1, the system will pay out $25 a week. It's important to remember that during this crisis, through the CARES Act and the FPUC program, you will get an additional $600 weekly benefit on top of that $25 payment. So you'll continue to get $625 as long as you're eligible until you exhaust what you paid into the system. Once you've exhausted and you have freelance or gig work 1099 wages, then you'll reapply for the PAU. I know it's confusing, but you have to be determined eligible with your independent contractor or your gig wages to be eligible for that program. And it's key, not for the beneficiary, but the federal government is paying all those dollars to gig workers and contracted workers. It's not coming out of the Colorado Trust Fund. So it's real important that if you're eligible under the CARES Act, that we make sure that that's being paid out of the federal resources and not the Colorado Trust Fund. that as a W-2 employer, your employer has paid into that system for you. So I would continue. What I would do is we're going to try to answer these questions in detail. And this is really the specificity of this question is they think that they're putting in 1099 wages that are disqualifying them for regular UI. We'll make sure we get an answer in there to tell you what to do in that circumstance.
You know, I'm going to, so another one, and Joe, sorry to put you on the spot, but this one I've heard from others as well, similar. Prior to the shutdown, I had monthly short-term rental income on my primary residence. That dried up. This income appears as one of several sources of other income and losses on my Schedule E, referenced in detail in the Form 8995K1 reporting. Is this the type of income loss covered through the PUA program?
Unfortunately, no. Remember, it's unemployment insurance, so it's attached to wage income. And so passive rental income is not seen as wage income. So it has to be wage income, regardless if it's traditional unemployment insurance or CARES, PUA or PAU unemployment insurance. And so rental income is not seen as that part of wage income. We'll make sure we provide more detailed avenues for this question, because I did see it a couple times in the chat line, John.
Okay. Here's another one for you, John.
Sorry, guys.
Good thing you're in the center of my screen here. I left my W-2 job to become an independent contractor in June of 2019, just last year. My understanding is that I will need to file a regular unemployment claim, get rejected, then file for PUA. Do you know why in the world I would need to apply and get rejected, only to have to apply to the program that applies to me in the first place?
I know this sounds very, very like, why would they do this? But again, remember, the federal government is a stimulus package to cover people who traditionally aren't covered by the unemployment system in our states. And so in Colorado, if you've had W-2 wages in excess of $2,500 at least, in the past 5 quarters, you must apply for unemployment insurance. And if you're eligible, you need to exhaust those benefits and then apply for the PAU unemployment insurance program using your 1099 wages. And so, all I can tell you is I know that most people are saying my wages as a W-2 employee aren't significant. I'm eligible for more with my 1099 wages. Keep in mind that as of March 29th, you will get an additional $600 a week, regardless of what program you're on top of your minimum benefit. And that goes through the end of July. So there is a little bit of financial cover there, regardless of what system you're on. But you need to exhaust what you paid into first, or what your employer has paid into first in the last 5 quarters, and then go on to the program that's available for people who hadn't had benefits before, to take advantage of those federal resources that we now have available in Colorado through the end of this year. Okay.
Joe, I'm going to give you a break for just a second and ask Susie a question.
Thank you.
There you go. Just moved here. Hold on, let me just grab it. So the question was, I just lost it. Oh, I don't want to ask Joe yet another question. I mean, that's unfair. So let's see. Why is the system still basing weekly benefit amount? This is for Joe, sorry.
I was hoping they'd all be for Joe.
Why is the system still basing the weekly benefit amount on income earned between October 2018 and September 2019? Should it be updated to at least include the last quarter of 2019? In my case, the amount of reported W-2 income would have been higher.
Yeah, it's working on a lag, so it's working in any of the 5 quarters past quarters where there was income. So that's why did you say September 2019 is still coming in?
Yeah.
So it's going back and finding in those 5 quarters was there income. So it's finding that there were W-2 wages reported on you. So it has to exhaust that time period before it will kick into your 1099 wages.
Okay. All right. Now I'm back to that question for Susie. Okay. It's about the PPP program. If my personal services income comes right into my personal checking account, if I apply for the PPP program, do I count as my own employee on the application? I have to affirm that I have employees, but it's just me.
Yeah, you're going to use net profit instead of traditional payroll. So you are the employee. Same thing with 1099, 1099 workers, you're applying for PPP on your own. So you're just going to use net profit for that. And then that slide that I had with the calculations, which we can help you with that form if you'd like to apply. But that's how you do it. You use net profit. So even if it's going into your personal, if it's going into your personal checking, that's not the most important thing. It's being able to show, that you generated revenue.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks, Susie.
Yeah.
So here's one that is a mix, but I think it ultimately goes to Joe. So I'll let you guys arm wrestle over it. But I am an independent contractor in professional services and have applied for the PPP to help supplement the lost income. I'm also a Lyft driver and stopped working to protect high-risk family members. I applied for normal unemployment insurance to help with this lost income because I had a W-2 last year. Am I doing this right? Can I apply and get both?
My answer would be, and I'm going to ask Susie to verify this, is you cannot take advantage of the PPP program and unemployment insurance. You have to select one or the other. And so if you had W-2 wages and the system lets you go through the process, you will figure out what your eligibility is on a weekly basis. Remember, you'll get an additional $600 on top of that as of March 29th through the end of July this year. So that may be financially better for you versus the PPP option. So there's a financial equation you need to work through, but you cannot apply for both. It'll disqualify you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. The rule of thumb is you just can't double dip. So you could apply for PPP and you can apply for unemployment. I think that it is that you have to look at where the juice is worth the squeeze. So if you get more from unemployment with that $600 and it's going to go for a little bit longer than the 8 weeks, then you need to think about that. But you can't double dip. That's the key.
John, if I could answer, I've noticed a lot of questions a little bit related to this, but location of your work is important. So we have a lot of contractors and gig workers that have business in Wyoming or have business out of state where they've earned wages as a contractor, not in Colorado. You need to apply for unemployment insurance in those states where those wages were paid to you. You wouldn't be eligible for Colorado for that portion of the work. Now, if you had work in Colorado, that work would be taken into consideration. But if you had significant amount of work coming from, let's say, Wyoming, you need to wait or go onto their unemployment system and apply for insurance in that state.
That's important. Thanks, Joe. So here's one interesting, I think it's similar to before, but let's just, can a gig worker with both 1099 wages with income apply for benefits under PPP for the lost 1099 income and under unemployment for W-2 loss income? Is that the double dipping scenario? It sounds like in a way they're aggregating it. I see you guys nodding.
Yeah, it's the same. You just can't double dip. So it's one or the other. You can apply for both, but you can't take both. You can't accept PPP money and then get unemployment too. That's going to get you in a pickle.
Yeah, and I think it's very hard, being in a situation where you need financial resources to stay viable. But the same thing applies. The federal government, state governments are not going to let you double dip from regular unemployment insurance and this new CARES Act unemployment insurance. They want you to exhaust what someone has paid into as an insurance or a benefit package and then apply for these new resources that are available for populations that haven't paid into that system. So I know it sounds very confusing and there's an extra step in there, but these are some of the things we're learning as we try to go to a world where we make sure that all workers, no matter if you're classified a W-2 or a 1099, that there's portable benefits for you if something happens to your work situation where there's a loss of hours or loss of wage. So we're going through this experiment, learning and trying to be better at the end of it, but it's a little cumbersome and problematic as we try to figure it out, as we're building the plane and trying to fly, John.
I got it. Changing the wheels on the bus as it drives. So I'm just going to follow up. I saw something come in on the chat that just essentially was, well, how do you choose? And one person was asking, should you maybe apply for both the UI unemployment insurance and the PPP, see which one comes through, given that it's not always clear that you're going to get one or the other.
We were recommending to business owners and workers to apply for everything and see what you get, and then make the smart decision. And, you know, again, as we've gone through these weeks that seem like months, and, you know, it just seems like idle when it first came out, seems like forever ago. And it was like, that's the quick cash. And then it wasn't. And then it was PPP, and, you know, and then unemployment, which, I mean, talk about historically, what an amazing thing to get an extra $600 a week. You know, and so I do think there's a lot of confusion for solopreneurs and bigger businesses on what, you know, kind of what to do. But I would say, you know, you have to make the smart decision, like look at it, like what's your runway, and go from there. Joe, what do you think?
You know, I think so. Remember that when you apply for unemployment insurance, there's no trigger until you certify that you want a payment. And so even if you're eligible, there won't be any trigger to your account until you say, on this Sunday, it's every 2 weeks, my situation hasn't changed and I need to claim unemployment for the past 2 weeks. So, you know, you can apply and wait to see if something comes through with PPP. The other thing is the average unemployment benefit we pay in Colorado is just over $400 a week. And so the max we pay is just at $600 a week. So regardless, there's a $200 range there on the average versus the high. In this period, you're going to get an additional $600 on top of that. And so keep that in mind as you're thinking about financially, what's the better financial option, safety net for you during this time.
And I know that we're coming to an end, but I'll add on to that also with PPP, you have to spend it within 8 weeks once you receive the loan. So you have to take your first disbursement, I think, within 10 days of the loan. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, you have to spend the forgiveness part, unless you want it to be a loan, which you probably don't. If you do, it's only 1% interest at 2-year term. But if you get approved for that money, you have to spend it within a certain amount of time. So that's the difference.
All right. Well, it's clearly clear that there's probably more detail that folks might want to follow up with both Joe, who provided the great website for asking questions, and then Susie through the SBDC. You know, I will tell you that I've taken away a couple of lessons. First, no double dipping. You know, see which one, you know, you squeeze and get the most juice. And we don't want people in a pickle. I think those were the key lessons, right? So I want to thank all of our panelists. Jennifer, thank you. That the survey work you've done and the leadership of the City of Boulder through your community vitality team has just been excellent, great partners. Joe, I just so appreciate and am impressed with the work that's happening through the state. And then always, Susie, you and your team at the SBDC, just such a great resource for our community. So I thank all of you for attending. Hopefully this was informative, but again, go to the Boulder Chamber website, boulderchamber.com, COVID-19, to always identify information and also to access resources and to send us questions that we can help answer. Thank you all, and let's get through this together. Take care.
Thank you, John.
Thanks,
Pleasure.
John.